Right, we want to rope in our panelists this morning. Remember, the topic that we're using this morning is the Kenya that we want. And we'll be discussing this and a raft of other issues as far as the country is concerned right now. What is the Kenya that you do want? Let us know. You can hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a profile name on Facebook, and 20505 our SMS portal. A lot is happening in the country right now. People are grappling with so many issues, top of which is also the issue of maize. Food is scarce in the country right now. Also, people having jitters about the general election, which is forthcoming. NASA is moving to court today to try and also maybe scuttle that particular process, saying that the awarding of a contract was not fair, right? So what do you have to say? And what is the Kenya that you're praying for as we're heading towards a general election? Allow me to introduce our panelists this morning who are already here in the studio with us. We have Dr. Mwangi. We'll give you their profiles as they will be giving their speeches today. Also, we do have with us Dr. Njoki Ngumi. We have with us Rita Oyier as well. We have Dr. Vincent Ogutu and Dr. Wale Akinyemi. Good morning, gentlemen and ladies.
Good morning.
Right. Of course, the topic of the day is the Kenya that we want. Looking at where we are right now, a lot is happening. And of course, there are bugbears and fears. So many people are not really happy with the current situation of how IBC also is handling the awarding of contract, keeping with the timelines of the elections as well. I don't know, what is your thought this morning, briefly, before we give you also, or what are your thoughts this morning before we give you briefly our podium for you to make some brief speeches on this, the Kenya that you do want. Let's start with Dr. Vincent Ogutu.
I had a great conversation coming here this morning with an Uber driver called Benson Gakuo. And I asked him, what Kenya does he want?
Okay.
So he told me he'd like a corruption-free Kenya, he'd like fair elections, he'd like simple infrastructural problems solved, like Uhuru Highway should be a double-decker, as he told me. And I asked him to paint the picture. What does he think a corruption-free Kenya is? And he said it's access to simple things, simple procedures without having to pay, the way they've done with e-citizen. You don't have to talk to anyone. You get exactly what your right is. So that's how he painted it for me. He had a lot of hope. He didn't seem demoralized, like things are so bad they can't be fixed. So I take hope from people like him who see that this can be changed. We've not reached a point where it's so bad that we can't fix it.
All right. Let's hear from Dr. Mwangi.
Yeah. The Kenya that we want, in fact, as I was just looking at today's newspaper, the cartoon by Munene actually shows the Kenya we definitely do not want. And the opposite of this cartoon is what we really want. And this is a simple cartoon that is basically talking about the cancer of tribalism that is so rampant, the lack of integrity that is so rampant, the hate speech that is so rampant, the warmongering that is so rampant, the laziness in public service that is so rampant. And the Kenya that we want, obviously, then, is the opposite of this. And then we see the paralyzed institutions that we've set up, the Anti-Corruption Commission, which is not able to do as much as it would like to do, the Commission for the Integration Commission, which is not able to do what to integrate the people of Kenya. So the Kenya that we want is one where we are an integrated, one people with competent leadership focused on the common good. I think that's the Kenya that we want. The common good, a focus on the common good for everybody. Yeah.
Focus on the common good for everybody. Let's hear from Dr. Njoki Ngumi, the Kenya that you do want.
I've just been thinking about that statement and wondering how do you say a thing that isn't necessarily railing against our failed systems that are almost anti-design because they're not designed to work for the people that need them, How do you say a thing that is positive and hopeful? Because I think maybe one sentence I can start with is that the Kenya that we want is one where people feel safe to invest for the long term. And I'll tell you why I say that. Right now, when you see all of the competitions that involve people giving money so that they can win,
yes,
all of them are very short-term things. When Kenyans want to get into deals, all of them are very short-term things. That stuff is also kind of trading into the way in which we make friends. You make friends so that you can gain from them. You get lovers and partners so that you can gain from them. People are having children for the hope of future gain from these children who are barely X days old, X months old. And so we don't feel confident enough for all manner of reasons, many of which are systemic and many of which are affecting all of us in very different ways, especially disenfranchising the most marginalized, the poorest, the people who are from tribal minorities, etc., etc. And we can go on, women, the youth. But the minute the most marginalized among us can feel safe enough to trust the processes in this country for gains in the future and to trust that they're still going to be there and they're still going to enjoy a gain in the future, that will be the Kenya that we want. We don't want a situation where people are scamming one another and that when we hear about these scams on social media, we are laughing that it wasn't us that fell for it. Because everybody wants a house, everybody wants security, everybody wants to be able to feel like they have a place where they can be safe and comfortable and secure. So when we stop having to trade for those things, and especially to trade in trust and to trade in honesties,
yes,
to be able to gain basics, that will be the Kenya that we want.
Thank you. Let's hear from Rita Oyier. Good morning.
I think for me, and having spoken with very many people from different sectors and segments, socioeconomic segments, I believe that the Kenya I want is in the Constitution. This Constitution from page to page is so rich, even including the matters of devolution, national cohesion, integration. It is so rich, but we're not doing enough to live the spirit of the Constitution. We want a Kenya that is human, and that's what this Constitution does. It makes everything human. A people, I don't want to say a people-driven country, but a country with the people at the heart of things. It's not a country about things, it's a country about people. And that's why there's a bit of fatigue when, I'm going to say, you see a very expensive project being flagged around and you have to go to a very expensive platform to actually see what has been done. But are you feeling it as a person? We need to have a human country, yeah? Like if a policeman stops you, for example, on a minor mistake, and you have to pay for something, where is the humanity in how we deal with issues, how we handle issues, how we relate with each other, how we lead this country, for example? How do you let people go hungry for so long? How do you make people fight for unga in a supermarket? Adults who are working, it's not because they don't have money. It's because the thing is not available. Food is not available. I think we've gotten to a place where there's no dignity in how we relate with each other, in how we are led.
Yes.
There's no humanity. There's no heart. And that's the Kenya that I want, where people are people. A country about people, not about things. Yeah.
Thank you, Rita. Let's hear from Dr. Wale Akinyemi, the Kenya that you do want.
A few weeks ago, the UK had elections. And isn't it interesting that there were elections, but nobody was moving out of the country because elections were coming? America had one of the most divisive elections in its history. And it was heated and all that. But nobody had to move out of the US out of fear of what's going to happen and all that. Why? Because people have confidence in the systems that have been put in place. So, as a foreigner, one of the things, well, I always say I'm a Kenyan of Nigerian descent. You know, one of the things that baffles me is when you talk amongst a lot of foreigners who are deliberately scheduling their leave to coincide with the election period. And a lot of people are planning to travel. And why is that? So that hurts me because this is home. And that hurts me because it means people do not have enough faith in the systems that will protect them. And I think the Kenya, that from where I sit, the Kenya I want to see is a Kenya where systems work and we are confident in the systems that work. And you know, where I've always, even on this platform, I've given my definition of democracy,
Yes.
which is where the child of a nobody can become somebody without knowing anybody.
Thank you very much. Right, at this point, I want to give you the lectern. You walk over to the lectern and talk to us about, yes, you've given us a bit of a smattering of what Kenya you want, but we want to get a comprehensive also hearing from you or speech from you to know what truly as a country we do want as Kenyans. So I'll just want to lay some ground rules also for the benefit of Rita. She's making her debut here on the Leadership Forum. Good to see you. I have my bell with me, so today I'm not using my cards as well, but today we have a bell only. And this is just to make sure that we're keeping time, not to overrun. Each of you have 5 minutes to deliver your speech. You'll walk to the podium. Remember also you have your microphone. So you're sort of tethered to that particular microphone. So you can remove it, just place it behind your seat. Then you can walk over to the lectern and also give that particular speech. So midway, I'm going to raise my bell just to tell you, yeah, you're halfway through your speech. So you should be also preparing to wind up. Then I'm going to dangle it a bit just to warn you that now, yes, you should be winding up. So if you go overboard, I'll ring the bell. So I think we should go sequentially, the way we're seated, but maybe I should begin with Dr. Caesar Mwangi, because you'll be also leaving early today. You have a board meeting, and you can walk to the podium and talk to Kenyans. Dr. Caesar Mwangi is currently the founding director of the Center for Personal Leadership, where he has been involved in designing and delivering people and organizational improvement initiatives, and also an entrepreneur in solar energy sector. Prior to this, he worked as a managing director of Sasani Limited, a public listed agribusiness. Caesar is also a visiting lecturer and a leadership coach at the Strathmore Business School. He regularly lectures and facilitates workshops in issues related to ethical leadership, corporate governance, change management, and people effectiveness. He has a PhD in organizational performance and change management from University of Johannesburg and an MBA from the Wits Business School in Johannesburg. He also chairs the board of Kenya Markets Trust and Kianda School in Nairobi, and is going to talk to us on the Kenya that we want. Caesar, you have 5 minutes beginning now.
Thank you. Good morning, Kenyans. The Kenya that we want. How can I possibly summarize this in 5 minutes? Let me do my best, because this is one country I love so much, because this is a country that I have been placed in by Providence, and therefore I must say that it's a country that I love very much. And therefore, when I speak about the Kenya that we want, I would like to really try and do the best I can do and summarize in 5 points. The Kenya that we want. Firstly, Kenya is a country with certain boundaries, and within those boundaries, there are people who live there. I being one of them, the panelists being there, and many other Kenyans, 45 million of us or so. And I would like to say that the Kenya that we want would one that basically meets our basic needs. Very basically, we have basic needs. What do we need? We need food, clothing, shelter. That's basic needs. And that's all that Kenyans want. We want enough food on our table. We want shelter over our heads. We want to be able to live comfortably and meet those basic needs. So that's one of the things that we need. And to do that, we really need to look at our food security issues. We need to look at our health services. If there's a problem of health, we need to be able to take care of that. And those are all basic needs. So the Kenya that we want is one where these services are provided and they are affordable and accessible to all people, not because they are they're available to those with money. That's the Kenya that we want. Basic needs. The second point I want to talk about, 45 million people living in this country. Different backgrounds, different tribes, different languages. But all of us have got to have harmonious relationships, my dear friends. As we speak right now, we have low-level civil wars operating in this country, going on in this country, in certain regions. We have an election coming up, and there's a lot of violence because different candidates have different groups that don't like one another, and they have to fight one another. We have heard of even young children being killed in this country. We have heard of spouses killing their partners, husbands or wives. I mean, relationships, my dear friends. If we cannot have good relationships, and live in harmony within our families, within our communities, and within our country, then we are a fractured society with broken down relationships. And as we speak right now, if you go to social media, we are fractured. Simply because there is some so-called political competition that is looming in the horizon in the next few months that are coming up. So we need to develop those relationships and live in relational harmony, because we are Kenyans, my dear friends, and we do not need to fight one another. We can dialogue and agree on how we're going to go forward, but let us build good relations between one another. So conflict resolution is very important. Ethnic reconciliation is very important, and a focus on the reduction of discrimination and victimization because of the differences that we have. The third point I want to make about the Kenya that we want is one which again is focused on the people. And I believe people must be provided with high-performance systems and processes for the delivery of services. Because these services are being provided to Kenyans who need these services so that they can operate their businesses, they can operate their schools, they can operate their NGOs. So we need systems that operate. And I must say that there's been some good progress in this regard, in certain areas. There are Huduma centers, etc. All these are an attempt to improve systems. Transport systems where so we don't get stuck in traffic for 2-3 hours just because we want to move 5 kilometers. We need proper public transport so that we don't have people having to get stuck in traffic. We need to have affordable transport so that we don't have people walking from Kangemi to industrial area, for example, in the urban areas. Delivery of basic services that are in alignment with the dignity of the people who need these services. The fourth point I would like to talk about is the issue, again, focused on the people, but it's about the self-actualization of the people, the transformation of the people, so that we can have people who live with great dignity and they know that they are going someplace. And I call that an aspiration for self-actualization of all people, which is only obtained through good education systems, continuous education systems, and accountability. As we speak right now, there is a review of our education system, which is very good, because we're trying to get people to start realizing that as a people we need to be better educated. We need to be educated for relevance. We need to be educated not only because we'll get a certificate, because we shall be better human beings through that education. And that will help us be people who live with much greater dignity as more informed people. And in the process of these educated people, my dear friends, we will have less of this lies that are spread, misleading information that is given to people because they cannot decipher the difference between truth and falsehood. We will be able to have people who can think and choose wisely, especially now that we're heading for an election. And the fifth, as I go to a close, is we've got to aspire for strong values and a strong culture that is going to enable us to build this country for future generations. And in this regard, the values which I would like to emphasize most are what I call legacy thinking values, legacy values. Every person in this country should imagine and know and realize that they are not going to live forever, that they have a responsibility to improve this country in the opportunities that they have and leave a legacy. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's a very difficult topic to talk about in 5 minutes. Yeah. Yeah.
To drill deeper on the salient points that Dr. Caesar has raised this morning, one being that we need to meet our basic needs, that being food, clothing, and shelter. The 45 million people that we are should live in harmony. Have we harmonized our relationships, right? The country went through a very harrowing torture as well during the 2007-2008 post-election violence, right? Did we have some time to actually reflect and drill deeper and make sure that there is reconciliation as a country? Or did we just embark back on barnstorming and going about the country with campaign, messages as well? So systems should operate as well. Right, thank you. We want to hear also from Dr. Njoki Ngumi. She'll be going up to the lectern as well. She is a medical doctor, a writer, and she held positions in private and public healthcare sectors in Kenya, a director of learning, monitoring, and research at the Ness Arts Company and Hiva Fund. She's also an avid Twitter user. You can follow her at Njoki Ngumi, right? Njoki, you have 5 minutes beginning now. Talk to us on the Kenya that we want.
Hello. It's always weird for me to stand behind a thing and feel like I'm separated from people, from it, because we're just kind of all having the same thoughts. And I'm not going to pretend to be some kind of thought leader. Half the times I say a thing, people say I was thinking that this whole time. You know what I mean? So I have the privilege of being able to stand here and speak, so let me see what I can do with the next 5 minutes. I was thinking about the phrase, the Kenya we want, and reflecting around the fact that Kenya as a concept is not urban. Kenya is not Nairobi. Kenya is not rural, you know, also, so that we can stop talking about those myths of mjini kuna anasa right now. Cities are not havens for evil. We're just, all of us are just Kenyans together. Kenya is not a Christian nation. Let's stop saying that it is. There's so many people who believe so many different things. We're such a diverse population, not just within spiritual context, but also many others. Kenya is not adult. There's so many youth, so many children. The percentage of children alone in this country is really high. And Kenya is not male. So whenever we talk about Kenya and we talk about people, the default person people will tick to is male, unless people specifically mention women. Who is we in the Kenya that we want? My first thought there was that the government is not a structure. It is people. So when we talk about the government has done, it is this conglomerate of people that have made decisions that has led us here. So we need to start understanding that from that point. We is all the people in the newspaper that we read about who are abusive and violent. They are all of us. All these fathers, all these mothers who are banning children, all the teachers that are preying on children. That is all of us. And why aren't we having conversations that are more about that? When we talk about the physical, emotional, sexual abuse that Kenyans are undergoing, that is who we are. And when we refuse to have conversations about that, we are failing ourselves. So when we talk about, yes, we want to be a better country, why aren't we talking about the places where we're failing? When we talk about we need to realize that the household is one of the biggest employers in this country. There's people doing domestic work, whether it's for free, which means it's underpaid and undervalued, or it's being paid poorly, because you don't find that the majority of people doing domestic work in households are paid very well. There's very limited possibilities for forward, upward mobility within that career. So we need to start thinking about all these people who do all this work that we then kind of cover over when we talk about Kenya as only employed people or self-employed people. We need to remember that households are also employing. We also need to remember private security as one of the places where there's very, very many people whose needs we are not understanding and we don't take into account. So who is we? When we talk about what we want, my first place that I thought about was with regard to politics. Politics is job seeking at the point in time where we are having elections. When somebody comes for an interview, their job is not supposed to be to tell you what the other person has done wrong. No. So we shouldn't be listening to these people when they come and say, look at this other guy, this is what they're doing. People should just boo them until they've come to say, this is what we're going to do for you. Also, we are a country that's used to broken promises. So we are not really, we're not really used to people keeping their promises as far as political things are concerned. So what we need are better systems as far as accountability is concerned. My last thought is one that has many separate points, and I'll just kind of try and lump them together, and it's that we need a future-proofed Kenya. Future-proofed. We need to understand that languages go beyond French and German for getting UN jobs. We are having more and more conversations with the East. Why aren't more of us thinking about having Chinese introduced for our youth to start learning? We need to understand this whole computer, social media, digital space a lot better than we do. We can't be celebrating because people have textbooks on laptops. They need to understand how to negotiate themselves in a digital space. And their teachers need to be way ahead of them. So if we are not teaching our teachers how to do that, then we are failing. We need to understand that opportunities at all levels need to transcend educational levels, which are very limited for very many people. We need to become healthy people. We need to give health for the people that are unwell and prevent disease in the people who are not unwell. We need to be people that are able to build wealth. And that goes into what I was talking about earlier with regard to being able to invest and wait not just scamming one another the way Kenyans are doing now. We need to be able to have fulfilling relationships, like Caesar had said earlier, where we are able to talk to one another with kindness, where we understand what consent is in sexual relationships, where we understand how to treat one another well and with respect without saying, I am a man, I am a woman, whatever. Like, what does respect look like across the board, outside of the nonsense that society has taught us? We need to be people that can be honest. We just need to be able to be honest with one another. And I think maybe if we start there, we'll be able to build this thing that we want and be able to change our systems from within.
Njoki, Ngumi. And of course, Kenya is not urban. It is not Nairobi, it's not Mombasa. Kenya is not a Christian nation, right? Many of us, what is really encapsulated in the Constitution, we shall find out what is there also in the Constitution. Who is we, right? We know the preamble of the Constitution begins we the people, but essentially who are we, right? Do we really have our own definition as a nation that this is Kenya and this is the attributes of a Kenyan, right? Those are some of the issues that we'll be talking about. Welcome back. You're watching Leadership Forum. And we're continuing with our topic this morning, the Kenya that we do want. We've heard from two of our speakers this morning. And of course, we're going to hear more on this other side of the break as well. Just a tender reminder on what we're asking you this morning as well. What is the Kenya that you do want? That is what we are using this morning to solicit maybe your views. You can hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV is a profile name on Facebook, and 20505 is our SMS portal. What is the Kenya that you do want? Right? It should be up momentarily. What is the Kenya that you do want? Right? So we will also sample some of your views much later in the course of the program as well. But for now, we want to hear from Dr. Vincent Ogutu, who is the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Planning and Development at Strathmore University. Vincent Ogutu is a full-time lecturer in organizational behavior, leadership and entrepreneurship at Strathmore University. He has a PhD in organizational management from Rutgers Business School, USA, and MSc in financial economics from the University of London, and a BA in economics from the University of Nairobi. He uses his research in psychology of meaningful work and social entrepreneurship to help organizations create meaningful work environments for their employees. He is a Fulbright scholar at the United States, or he was at the United States 2009-2014. Also, he has been a frequent TED Talks speaker, one of which also was Barcelona 2016. So you have 5 minutes, Vincent, beginning now.
Good morning, Kenyans, my fellow Kenyans. I always say that because people get a little surprised when they hear my full name's Vincent Onyango Ogutu, and they just don't believe it. But it's true. I am Kenyan, and I'm proud to be Kenyan, of mixed race, of mixed African and Asian extraction. And unlike my friend Wale here, who's from Nigeria, but could pass for Kenyan, and people will probably greet him in Swahili. In my case, people tend to speak to me in English because they think I'm a foreigner. So I have the privilege of knowing Kenya as a Kenyan because I was born and bred here. And I also know Kenya as a foreigner because I'm usually treated as a foreigner, which is actually a good thing in Kenya because we treat foreigners so well. And I get all this celebrity treatment for nothing because I'm actually a fellow Kenyan. So that's what I want to start by talking about. Why do we treat foreigners better than each other? And we even trust foreigners more than Kenyans. If you're thinking of a big post somewhere and you don't want any controversy, any drama, any politics, we'll always say, why don't we just get a foreigner to do this because Kenyans might be tribal. Why do we do this? So in the Kenya that I want, we would not be tribal. In fact, tribes for us would be a good thing, something that talks about our diversity, that celebrates our diversity. When I was living in the United States, I had a great time talking about our culture. And I wouldn't always talk about my Luo culture. I would talk about the Maasai's because it's so exotic, and I could talk about so many exciting things about the Maasai. And I love that I can talk about different tribes and celebrate that diversity instead of always thinking of people from the other tribe as my enemy. Right now, I'm trying to learn Kikuyu because I love the language. I have lots of Kikuyu friends. Dr. Caesar Mwangi is here. He's been teaching me a few expressions as well. And so for me, the Kenya that I want is a Kenya where tribe is actually a great thing, and we love it, and we love each other's languages and each other's food and each other's culture, and we strive to learn it and to celebrate it. Then the other thing that I want to talk about, and this actually relates to the topic, the Kenya that we want. When we talk about something that we want, we're being aspirational. We're looking into the future, we're dreaming. And in my case, you might call me a dreamer, but I actually believe that if you want something to happen, you first have to dream it. You have to see it. And so in the Kenya that I want, we're not helpless. We're actually empowered. A lot of times I meet fellow Kenyans who tell me, serikali ifanye hivi, serikali saidia, I wish our leaders would do this. And they act totally powerless when in fact, it's in their hands. Their future is in their hands. Our future is in our hands. So in the Kenya that I want, people will have woken up to the fact that the future is in their hands. They don't have to wait for a savior to come from above. It's a hoax, it's a lie. And that's why I even teach entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurs are people who see a problem in society, and then they figure out a solution. And then on top of that, they figure out how to make money by delivering the solution. And so it's sustainable. And so I love entrepreneurs. And they're ready to talk with anyone across the tribal, racial divide. As long as you're bringing something to the table, we'll work together. I love entrepreneurs. So I wish all Kenyans could think like that. It's in my hands. We can do this. Think about some of the basic needs that we still suffer from. And Dr. Caesar was just talking about that. Why do we suffer things that were solved 2,000 years ago? In the ancient city of Rome, they actually had 3-story stone buildings. They had paved roads that are still there today, you know, cobblestones. They had water coming in aqueducts into the ancient city of Rome, and those aqueducts are still in use today. They were built to last 2,000 years. They would use water for entertainment, put it in a stadium, the Colosseum, flood it to the 2nd level, and then bring battleships to fight each other. And they could do that 2,000 years ago. Why are we still talking of not having water? It's really ridiculous. So we have the power to do this. And then lastly, I think we should have an education system that teaches us all of these things, that really imbues that self-confidence that we need to have as a nation. I see it in Nairobi. There are a lot of people who have that hustle, that spirit of get up and go, and I'd love to see that spread out to the whole nation, and I think the education system is where we can do it. It's a blank page that we're given every year. We have 1 million students that we can turn into zombies who can only pass exams, or we can use those 12 years that they are with us to teach them skills that will help them, competencies, to teach them values. We've talked about corruption. We can teach them about honesty, about compassion. And these are things we can teach if we decide to do it. So in the Kenya that I'd love to see, the education system would actually give us values, competencies, incredible self-confidence. And for me, this is not a dream. This is something that I'm already working on. So I encourage all Kenyans to not wait. You can actually do it starting today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent Ogutu. Are we a tribeless nation, right? Or he's so desirous to have a tribeless Kenya. Why are we a water-scarce country, you know, up to now, as listed by the United Nations? And of course, he's given a good example of Rome as well, with the aqueduct as well. And if we could talk about also the education system, is it really churning zombies? Or are we developing people who have the critical thinking ability? That is what we've heard from Vincent Ogutu. We shall be talking about these salient points much later in the course of the program. Right now, we want to hear from Rita Oyier. Rita will walk over to the podium and talk to us this morning as well on the Kenyan that we do want. She is a businesswoman. She is also communications and marketing expert, and also a very prolific writer as well. We shall hear from her this morning, talking to us on the Kenya that we do want. Rita, you have 5 minutes. Let me also set my stopwatch here so that we can keep track of time, starting now.
Thank you, Debarl. This is the Kenya I want. It's in the Constitution. I have heard what Dr. Caesar said, Vincent has said, and I have had so many Kenyans speak about the same thing: water, food, security. I'd like to differentiate for Kenyans today that there's a difference between asking for something that is already your constitutional right. And I'll refer to Article 43. The incumbents right now had a manifesto in 2013. It was drawn from Article 43. It called it the most, in 2013 they said the most basic revolution from Article 43, which says every person, every Kenyan citizen has the right to the highest attainable standard of health, which includes the right to healthcare services, including reproductive healthcare. So why are doctors and nurses on strike? Why? Why are they not getting paid? We don't have to beg anyone for these things. It's our constitutional right. Every Kenyan has a right to accessible and adequate housing and to reasonable standards of sanitization. So why can't people afford good homes? Why is housing so expensive? It is irrational. We have a whole ministry of, I think it's a ministry of housing or something. We've always had it. 54 years down the line, what have we done about our housing situation as a country? The third, it says, every Kenyan has the right to be free from hunger and to have adequate food of acceptable quality. Why are we on the streets begging for unga? Is it normal? We pay high taxes. We have high debt. Why is it acceptable for us as Kenyans? Why is it okay for our leaders to let grown adults, like I had indicated, fight for unga in a supermarket? I think you have seen the viral videos. Literally, it's not because they don't have the money, but the money can't feed the families. That is, it's stealing the spirit and the dignity of every single Kenyan who's paying tax. Then finally, in regards to Article 43, I'll skip a few things. But every Kenyan has a right to clean and safe water in adequate quantities. When was the last time you had the CS of water do something to make sure you have water in your own home? The norm is rationing. The norm is seeing people in Turkana digging holes and getting some water that you can't even use to wash your shoes or your cars. So why have we let it 54 years down the line be acceptable to live like that? I want a Kenyan leader who says his whole manifesto should be, I will implement the Constitution. As simple as that. Now, I refer to Article 10 because we seem not to know what the Constitution says about us. Article 10, Part B says, in the segment about the national values and principle of governance, that a leader has to make sure every Kenyan has human dignity, that there is equity, there is social justice, there is inclusiveness, there is non-discrimination and protection of the marginalized. So when I speak with someone in Mandera and they tell me, do you know, Rita, our constituencies, there's nothing that connects them. There's no infrastructure that connects our constituencies. When you speak to someone who says, in my county, you only get employed if you're related to the governor. We have a serious problem because these things are inbuilt in our constitution. And then I'll refer to the final two things in Article 10. Good governance, integrity, that's Part C. That the values a leader, because we pay these people. Good governance, integrity, transparency, and accountability. So why is it that we have moved from having every regime had one grand corruption? If it was Goldenberg, Anglo-Leasing, now every month we have a new grand corruption. How did we get here? as a country. It's in the Constitution. It's nobody's doing you a favor. And finally, this is what annoys me the most. Sustainable development. That development has to be sustainable. We cannot use all our money to pay for debt because we built a railway. That is not sustainability. You can't do that in your own home. You can't buy a car or build a house and your children are going hungry. Or that now you have to keep taking more debt to repay. There's nothing sustainable about the development we have currently. We have 3 generations. This is one regime, 4 years. 3 generations will be repaying this debt. The next government will have no money to do anything because we have overstretched. There's the concept of sustainability, which I thought was basic business education, is lost. I want a president and I want a country where we walk with this like we walk with the Bible. This is a good constitution. It might have its challenges. We don't have to have senior members, doctors, saying that we need food when it is a constitutional right. We are lost. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. All right, and of course, domicile there in the Constitution are your rights as well. Just head over there, Article 43 as well. She's actually put it very well, Rita, there. You have the question that she's probed. Why are the doctors are striking? Why are the nurses striking? It is your legal right to actually access medical care. Also accessibility to adequate housing and to reasonable standards of sanitation, to be free from hunger, to have adequate food of acceptable quality. Why do we have, in this epoch of time, people dying in this country because of hunger? Yet it is their constitutional right to be given food. Those are very ticklish issues, of course, we shall be discussing with our panelists also much later in the course of the program. Let's hear finally from Dr. Wale Akinyemi. He'll walk over to the podium to talk to us. He's the CEO of Power Talks. I'm trying to rush over there also to get his profile, if you may just mount it up for the viewers to see as well. And he's engaged in corporate strategy formulation, runs a regular week-long transformational course tagged Inspired to Inspire. He's a graduate also of demography and social statistics. Wale, you have 5 minutes beginning now.
Thank you. I think I want to start by going into history. What made empires great in the past? Now, if you look at different empires, a couple of things, but let's look at some things that cut across. Let's look at from the Egyptian Empire, the Roman Empire, the British Empire, and even the American Empire, I might say. What made these empires rise and become so great? One key thing was that they provided an environment where people could come from all over the world, settle, dream, execute their dreams, contribute to the development, and so they were melting pots for minds from all over the world. And they became great empires. Now, I have worked in over 20-something African countries. And one thing I have observed is that I have not seen an African country that has what it takes to become a great empire like Kenya. It is the one place where you have people from all over, people like me, come in and can settle, can dream and build dreams. So for me, from where I sit, Kenya is a place where dreams can be built. But so why then do we have the problems that we have? I read a book called Why Nations Fail by Dan Acemoglu and James Robinson. And they looked at different nations that have succeeded and that have failed and realized, look, it's not geographical, it's not. Why nations fail is because their leaders create what they call extractive institutions. That means they have institutions that can take from the nation, and there is no system in place to protect the powerful from themselves. In the nations that succeed, you have inclusive institutions where you have a structure that can check the excesses of the powerful. We look at what is happening in the United States right now, and we look at the systems that are working to check if the president suggested interference in a process. Now, those are the things that make nations succeed. The powerful need to be protected from themselves. So the Kenya I want to see is a Kenya where the, number one, people can come from all over, as it is right now, but even on a bigger scale, settle and contribute to the development. The Kenya I want to see is a Kenya where the powerful are protected, the rich are protected from themselves. Because the greatest threat against the country, against nations, are the unprotected, powerful people. And when I say unprotected, they are unprotected from themselves. Now, let's look at certain things. And when we have these institutions, it will birth the right kind of environment. When you look at someone like Albert Einstein, he was born a German. He became a great name in the United States. You look at Madeleine Albright. She was born in the Czech Republic, became a great name in the United States. Also, she came originally from the Czech Republic. You look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, originally from Austria, becomes a great name. And the list goes on, you know, of different people. And I think that is the point I'm making. If Albert Einstein had come to Kenya, would he have become that global citizen? Would the environment have supported the global thoughts that came out of him? Or, with due respect, would he have just been, and I'm not saying this lightly to put down any profession, but he would probably have been a lecturer, a teacher, all right? Not making contributions globally. So the Kenya we want, this is the key function of leadership. Create this environment. We are here saying this is the Kenya we want. That's an effect. We need to look beyond that and look at the cause. What is the environment that births the Kenya we want? You know, we celebrate so many times. We celebrate, oh, there's a new mall here, there's a new mall here, and fantastic, bravo. But a society that celebrates its malls more than it celebrates its factories is headed in the wrong direction. I'm sorry to say. So, let us preserve this position. Kenya is personal to me. I got my life here. Let's preserve this position and let the leaders come together and sign a pact that nobody has to die because of elections. Thank you.
Of course, we have different organizations who also, they're overseeing that particular project of the peace pledge and also holding the leaders accountable by having them sign these particular pledges that no one will die even as we're heading towards a general election, and we should be observing peace. It's time now to discuss this and a raft of other issues that have been raised with our panelists here. And meeting our basic needs, food, clothing, and shelter, this was raised by you, Dr. Caesar. And of course, that also has been aptly captured by Article 43, as alluded to by Rita this morning. Let's talk about that, because the Kenya we have right now does not seem to be, you know, up. The ante has not really been up, you know, up to scratch with delivering this basic necessity, right? Food, clothing, and shelter.
Yeah. In fact, the Constitution is very clear on those basic needs. And one thing we are very good at in Kenya is documenting our plans, documenting a beautiful Constitution. But when it comes to implementing, we're very poor. We've got beautiful values even in that very Constitution.
Yes.
But we do not practice those values. So we leave things on paper. Now, basic needs, tragically, Debarl, and I'll say tragically,
yes,
Kenya is one of the most unequal societies in the world. Okay? Comparable, unfortunately, to South Africa and some of the Latin American countries. Okay?
Yes.
And that does not augur well for a sustainable future, because we are totally fractured in that regard, where there's a few with a lot, and the majority are simply seen as votes. And they're not seen as human beings with dignity who deserve to live with dignity. And that is where the challenge is. Mm-hmm. And that is why we have an angry nation where people kill their own children, where spouses kill each other, where thuggery is on the increase, and we have insecurity. Because people say, I have nothing to lose, I am not respected, I am a nobody, nobody cares about me, I don't even have my basics. Debarl, a basic need like water, and it has been mentioned here in this place. Do you know water is sold at 5 shillings in the low-income areas in this country? 5 shillings for a 20-litre jerry can of water. And many people can hardly afford that 5 shillings. I mean, how can we sustain a nation like that? Yet there are people, for their lunch, they spend 4,000 shillings for lunch. Right? There are people who are flying in helicopters to attend funerals. They can afford that. But there are those who cannot even afford a cup of water to wash, to drink, or even to wash their children at home.
Right.
That is not sustainable.
And I would love all of you to actually just chip in, you know, not really to go sequentially the way we're seated. Yeah. If you have a point you can actually raise. Isn't it a pity that even right now, after the discovery of aquifers in Turkana, where they say for the next 70 years, Kenya can be, you know, having enough water to feed the whole country, nothing is being done to actually tap this particular aquifer?
I would like to speak on that. Speak on the aquifer and also speak on coast region, yeah? Mm-hmm. Because they have serious water issues. How, with all the mines we have in this country, how have we never figured out desalination? Is someone looking at it? Because the issue with the aquifer seems to be the saltiness of the water.
Yes.
Isn't that a better problem when Israel are developing water by combining hydrogen and oxygen in a desert? We cannot desalinate our water. And that's why I say our problem is lack of leadership. We don't have the right leadership. And I'm hoping maybe for the first time, we'll have a leader who thinks and who supports thinking processes. Like he's saying, we are celebrating malls instead of celebrating industries. How do we desalinate our water? Mm-hmm. Who is thinking about it?
Yes.
What is the CS of... like, you're asking a very serious question. You're saying nothing has been done. Because even if anything has been done, nobody has bothered to say, this is what we are trying to do.
Yes.
Or this is how much
we are not in the loop. We are not given any, there's no access to information at all to the citizenry. Is it we who are ignorant? We don't seek this information? Dr. Ngumi?
I agree. I agree with a lot of what Rita has said. I do think there's a thing we have in excess in this country, and that's experts. So there are people who know. There are people who know about this water. There are people who know exactly what it will take for X to become Y, to become Z. Some of these technocrats get absorbed into government, and then like all their good ideas just die there because like the system in which they are is for the vast majority of people in it to just survive, to get from one day to the next to the next. If you come with all these ideals about change and wonderful things and what have you, it becomes then very difficult. The other thing about what Debarl said about information, if we are at a point in time where everything in the news is this political candidate said this about this other political candidate, even if somebody did a feature on how water moves, is it the first thing we're going to see? You people of Nation will put it here in page 37, because it's not the thing that will move the newspaper. Even if you put it on the front page, you'll be the first ones to tell us that Showdown as Raila goes to court will sell better than Kenyans to have water from now henceforth. You'll be the first ones to tell us that. So I don't think media can convene us here also and say what is like how freedom of access to information. You can't without realizing that you're also capable. That's the first thing I wanted to say. The second thing I wanted to say was that we've arrived at a place where it's actually easier for people to go back into office by denying the people basic needs. The minute you make people feel as though water is a thing they need to rely on a politician for, you've already won votes. Right? So you're there campaigning and you say, Apa nitaleta maji. Who are you? Who are you? Why would you imagine that you can bring water to Kenyans, the water that the Constitution has promised them, as Richard so eloquently said earlier? Why should we feel as though our access to water, our access to electricity is a basic need, in 2017. We could have argued otherwise in 1957, but we are in 2017 now. Things have shifted. Education, access to education is a basic need. When MPs can sit here and say, the reason we are suffering and we need side hustles, an MP telling you they need a side hustle when we know their salaries, is because we are lending all our money to our constituents. I'm like, are we supposed to feel sorry for you? Why aren't you asking your constituents what are the things that they need money for, and then making systems so that constituents can get the money that we all pay in VAT, in payee, in all these other taxes and we are one of the highest taxed countries in this world relative to what the people get in return for their taxes. So systems, broken systems, where we now start having to rely on a person for water, and we now start having to go to MPs' offices to ask, my daughter needs to go to high school. My daughter needs to do X, Y, Z. My son needs this opportunity. My wife, give my nini a job. When you're not creating the systems that give Kenyans jobs, that give Kenyans water. So we've started relying on people for the things that systems should be delivering, and the people are encouraging us to rely on them.
Thank you. And I think also this was raised by Dr. Vincent, the water scarcity issue as well. She's talking about the broken system in this country that we do have. But perennially, we're always there. You know, next year we'll have stories and features, and our anchorman and the reporter here, Nimro Tabu, will go to Turkana, and we'll still have the same story. Nothing will be done by the government, yet we know we have a very expansive water table in Turkana, as we mentioned, and also Ruiru right now.
Yeah, one of my high school teachers when I was back in high school told us that human beings are the only animals that make the same mistake twice. You know, other animals learn immediately. If there's danger, I won't go into this place again. I know what it looks like. I've seen it before. I won't do it again. But we have this ability to be lied to over and over again. As Rita is saying, somebody promises you water, and then you'll elect the same person again. You know, your MP, your governor, president, whoever it is. So we have this ability somehow to be cheated over and over again, when in fact we should just systematically remove people who broke their promises, and then put people and make them accountable. And within a short space of time, if we see that they're not delivering, we start a vote of no confidence until people realize we're serious. And a lot of these leaders are in there to enrich themselves. They're not there for us. And again, we get lied to, and we don't see it coming, even though it's happened over and over again. I was in Berlin 3 weeks ago, and I was being shown around the city, and I passed outside Angela Merkel's apartment in Berlin. So I was told that even though they built a house for the chancellor, she preferred to stay in her flat with her neighbors that she's known for the past 20 years. So whenever she's in Berlin, she goes to her flat. It's an apartment building. This could be a house in Kileleshwa with, like a 5-6 story building, and she has one corner apartment there, and the security was not even that tight. I was walking outside the apartment. I mean, these are leaders who are kind of selfless. So I'm here to serve. I'm here to serve a particular agenda to help my people. So we have to hold our leaders accountable. Don't get lied to. Don't fall for the same things. If there's anything you can do, it's to vote the right people in, vote the right, wrong people out. And then, above all, don't hold your breath waiting for the leaders to save you. Let's start solving our problems ourselves as Nyumba Kumi, a community, as entrepreneurs. Let's come up with solutions. Why do we sit back helpless? That I can never understand. We are all powerful as it is.
All right. Let's say from Dr. Wale, I like the point that you raise of of the no confidence motion, right? Should it just be the remit of Parliament to actually raise this, or we, the people, with the power that you've been given by the Constitution, can actually come up with such a motion? And what will be the metrics of coming up with such a motion? But let's hear from Dr. Wale.
One of the things I'm privileged to do in this country is to teach transformational leadership at the Kenya School of Government. And one of the problems I see is the definition of the word transformation. And I've talked about that a lot of times. I've seen so many countries, organizations have transformation agendas. But, you know, when I was a kid, growing up in Lagos, what did the government, the politicians promise us? They promised water, electricity, roads, hospitals, and schools in the 70s. 2014, what did they promise? Exactly the same thing. Now, and so I'm sure this is not the first time we are having this conversation here, and it's hope, you know, is it going to be the last? How do you know if a society has transformed? It is when the problems change. If the fathers, if the children are dealing with the same problems that the fathers dealt with, that is the scorecard right there, that transformation has not happened. Why doesn't transformation happen? You know, why don't our problems change? It's because I think we have not understood the word transformation. It sounds like a very nice, funky thing to, you know, say we have a transformation agenda. But to understand transformation, you need to look at the butterfly. There's the egg, there's the caterpillar, there's the pupa, and then there's the adult. Those are 4 distinct forms. Each form is different. So if we're having a transformation, when you hear the word transatlantic, it means across the Atlantic. Transcontinental, across the continent. Even transoia, we know what trans means. Trans means across. So transform means across form, from egg to caterpillar to pupa to adult. What do we have in a lot of Africa today? We have excessive activity within a form. That's what we call transformation. So we are so busy doing stuff, but 40, 50 years later, we are still eggs. So why, you can paint the egg. We deceive ourselves with the word rebrand. You know, we paint the egg blue, paint it red, paint it yellow, but we're still eggs. So why isn't transformation happening? The Constitution is as good as the environment in which it operates. And that's the big thing we need to look at. Well, let me ask my colleagues a question. Why do matatu drivers drive the way they do? Think of it. If a matatu driver, if you're driving in your car and a matatu driver overlaps and cuts in front of you, you'll be angry, isn't it? Yeah. But do you know the same thing that makes you angry when you're in your car is what will make you happy when you're in the matatu? Isn't it? It's the same. You'll be happy that, hey.
So when you change the environment.
In fact, you know the matatus that drive badly because it will get you fast. So it is the customers that have created that environment. So we can talk constitution every day. If we do not address environment, we will have this conversation in 5 years' time.
All right, we'll hear also from the social media, but you raise also a very important point that we are a fractured society, yes, right? Yeah. Why do we call ourselves, or why do we actually put up such a statement that we are a fractured society?
Yeah. You see, Debarl, one of the things I always say, behavior, consistent behavior, is a manifestation of the deeply held values that we have. Whatever we see on the outside, the behavior is a manifestation of the values we hold inside. And the deeper those values are, the more consistent that behavior. So we've had a consistently negative behavior in terms of division, tribalism, them versus us, greed, corruption, because we hold those values in us. Okay? Now, secondly, I'd just like to point out that talk and documentation, which we're very good at, is a manifestation of what we would like to appear to aspire for. It's about appearances. It's about public relations. And we have gone to that mode of public relations more than anything else. We are fractured. We have a problem with that fracturedness, and it is because of our values. And unless we change those values, we are not going to change our behavior and consistent behavior, and we're not going to change the country. So we need to address our values. I know my friend Dr. Wale here says we should address the environment. First, we address the values in the individual. The smallest unit of change is the individual. And Mahatma Gandhi said, we have to be the change we want to see out there. So I have to start with myself. And if you read the story of Mahatma Gandhi, it's very beautiful. One time Mahatma Gandhi got upset with his wife. And this is one very interesting story that I read. He got upset with his wife because she refused to wash a toilet and she wanted a servant to wash it. And he told her, if you want the servant to wash it, you should be prepared also to wash the toilet. And you're saying that is the kind of dignity we have to give to everybody. We have to be prepared to change ourselves. And he got upset with his wife because of that. He said, we have to be the change we want to see. And Kenyans are like that. Everything we do, and a lot of us, we know, I know many, many people who talk very well, who appear very good. But when you hear the kind of things, the way they treat their families, the way they treat their employees, it is terrible. Terrible.
Terrible.
Yeah. So,
thank you. Thank you.
So values.
Right.
Values.
We need to hear from the social media. We'll come back to just very briefly what people are saying on social media on USA. And Wusha Jose, she's standing by.
Right, so I've been sampling some of your feedback, very beautiful sentiments and aspirations for Kenya. So I'll just get straight to it. We have Alphonse who says, I want a Kenya that where development projects won't be tied to politics. We also have, the touch seems to be acting up. We have Dr. Maina who says, a caring nation where we share what we have, we all eat, sleep in houses, and feel safe. We need each other. We have enough. We also have Chifu, incidentally, also goes by the name Kenya that we want. He says, we want a Kenya that is full of love and unity, a Kenya that we live like we should. We have Kimani who says, I want a Kenya that puts Kenyans first, that invests in its people and not things. That is the Kenya envisioned. We also have Dennis who says, sorry, I think I let that one go. We have Alphonse who says, we pray that disillusionment doesn't manifest. We need to continuously water the fighting spirit. There is also a Chifu who says, we want a leader who provides stationery to kids in Mandera, not laptops to people who don't have pencils in the first place. Interesting sentiment there. We have Chifu who says, a Kenya that greed is not the driver, but humanity is. And finally, we have Ali who says, I want a Kenya where we will be fighting obesity rather than fighting hunger from... So, on the other side of the problems. But yes, those are your sentiments. Remember, you can keep the conversation going on AM Live and TV. That is on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. This is a conversation everyone should chime in because we are all Kenyans and we all want what is best for Kenya. Back to you, Debarl.
Many thanks indeed, Wusha there. Of course, that should be also maybe an object for one of the party's manifestos. Yeah. I'll make sure that we have an obese Kenya. We solve this problem with our hunger. We continue the conversation, right? And maybe just to briefly just give you a last closing remarks, because I know you have to leave right now. You have a meeting very early, Dr. Caesar. Then we'll hear from Rita.
Yes, I like some of those sentiments on social media. And I really like that aspect of a Kenya where there is love. You know, the most basic commandment is a love of God and a love of your neighbor. Yes. I mean, if we could just have that, I think we could go very, very far. And we don't need to talk too much. We don't need to document huge, beautiful constitutions and huge policies and all that. Just love God with all your heart and all your soul, and your neighbor as yourself. I mean, that is enough for us to live a very good and happy life for everybody. And we'll not have the kind of chaos sometimes we seem to have. Yeah, I think I'd like to close with that. Thank you very much.
For your input this morning. We really do appreciate you coming through also and talking to us. We appreciate you have to go, so we'll let you go. Maybe, Rita, you can continue on the national values that we've been talking a good game. And I think even on this forum, Dr. Vincent, we've had even a session where we went blow by blow on the national values in this country. And sometimes I feel like, we're just doing, it's a talking shop we're doing. Is there anyone listening?
That's a good question. Is there anyone listening? But I come from a project management background. And I know there's a big difference between a beautiful strategy and the result you get. But there's a science to that. There's a science between moving from this to how we live every day. And the science is very simple. When you want to deliver a strategic result, you identify the projects. What projects will deliver what we want strategically? Then each project has a daily deliverable. So we can call our projects the ministries, for example, or the presidential office, or the executive, or the legal, whatever it is. then what do they deliver every day? This constitution is so beautiful. I know we'd want to call it paperwork, but if we don't monitor it every day, we are paying people for something. That something includes the president has to every year report to Kenyans on all the measures he's taken to ensure national cohesion and inclusivity. Did you know that's in the Constitution? Like the State of the Nation, he has to report, what has my office done this year, all the steps to make sure everyone is included. Politics is about resources. There's nothing else. Now, the story in resources is, where is it allocated? Where is it prioritized? Some are allocating to themselves. So we cannot say that moving from this to results is magic called environment. Every day, how are we holding our policemen accountable? Every day, what is the president reporting on? Every day, what is the CS of water saying they have done? And those daily results, at the end of the year, when we are hearing the State of the Nation, will have made progress. But we are not waiting for magic dust in the name of an environment or culture. We create it. Now, yesterday, someone was arrested, actually 3 gentlemen were arrested for stealing 1 cabbage worth 40 shillings. Tomorrow, who are we arresting? Yet people have been stealing billions. Last week I read something interesting. The difference between 1 million and 1 billion. 1 million is 32 days, if you put it second-wise. 1 billion is 3,200 years. That is the difference between stealing 1 million shillings and stealing 1 billion shillings. So it is the daily monitoring and accountability. When you tell that matatu driver, you're not going to overlap. You tell them tomorrow, the 3rd day they will not overlap because someone is holding them accountable. We are not waiting at the end of the year to say, oops, our culture is wrong.
Thank you.
It's daily what we do
Daily
to deliver the Kenya we want.
So those should be the guiding steps, you know, towards now realizing the ultimate goal. What are the deliverables that we have daily? And we should put these people, you know, to accountability. You tell us, yes, we have these gigantic plans, but what are the breakdowns to make us get there? Dr. Vincent.
So I have 2 points I'd like to make. The first refers to what Alphonse Mudui said on Twitter.
Yes.
So he says he wants a Kenya where development projects are not tied to politics. So meaning the development projects are for us. It's not something to impress us so you get re-elected. It's actually something that's going to help us. And this ties back to what Dr. Njoki spoke about right at the beginning, about the short-termism, that we tend to go for projects that have quick results, but maybe we need to invest in something that will take 10, 20 years to develop, but which once in place will make a huge difference to us, to all of us. So that is something that we need to work on, to prioritize. So again, when we are voting for these people, let's not listen to the short-term projects that they talk about. If they dare talk about something that will outlast their term, then it means they really care for us. So that's one thing that, one point I'd like to make.
Yes.
Then the second point is hearkening back to what you said, is anybody listening? Now, Debarl, frankly, when I come to AM Live, I'm hoping that it'll make a difference, that Kenyans out there who are watching this will get something from it.
Yes.
And the difference I'd like it to make today is for them to take it back to themselves. And I think Rita mentioned this. What am I doing personally in order to bring this Kenya that I want to happen? And it has to do with values. Am I the sort of person who's tribalistic? Are my statements tribalistic? Am I stoking hatred in my comments? Do I evaluate people according to tribe instead of according to issues? So let me watch my tongue and monitor how many times I do that. And I have to stop it, first of all, myself. Then I have to stop my relatives and my friends who are around me from that sort of rhetoric. Then, am I solving problems, or am I waiting for people to solve them for me? So what am I doing at home? Do I get up and repair something that is broken? Or do I hope that the maid, as we were being told, or somebody else will fix it? If it's a problem in the neighborhood, am I waiting for the MCA to fix it? Or am I getting my neighbors together and we say, let's fix this thing? So if we just start with those tiny little targets where we make a difference, and you can actually measure, again, as Rita was saying, my daily targets. Do I meet them? Then I think collectively you put the 40 million Kenyans that we are surely will advance if we each decide to make a difference ourselves. What am I doing to build the Kenya that I want?
Thank you. Dr. Njoki, Ngumi.
Yeah, I want to say two things. One is with regard to what Caesar had said earlier about interpersonal relationships. Because it's people relating that builds a home where people are getting along, that is a peaceful home, that is a peaceful workplace, that is a peaceful, I mean, name it. And then you just open the newspaper to see are Kenyans getting along, you discover no, there's a jilted farmhand here who killed a girl and brutalized a boy, and then you read, and it's because he wasn't allowed to marry who he wants. Okay. You read that people want estates to have video cameras. So now we want CCTV on all Kenyans so that we can monitor and catch people who are doing bad things, because it wasn't enough that Kenyans live in peace without being watched. What does that mean? What does it mean when we can only trust some all-seeing eye above us to watch us? Man gets 20 years for raping daughter, and then he says, in his appeal, the man had asked for leniency, arguing that he's an old man, married with 6 children, so there are 6 people who are in danger from him, who depend on him, and has reformed and should be given a second chance. What does has reformed mean when you have raped your daughter? How can this be an acceptable article for somebody to write? How do we not understand? Because there is a long list of P3s that doctors like myself have signed of people who have been raped by family members, by what have you, of people who say things like this: I have reformed, I won't do it again. What does that mean? What does it mean when the family say, actually spare him, he's the one who's earning our money? What does that mean? So when we have all these small crosses in morals, how does that translate in the big scheme, where if somebody is building us a road, we will let them get away with X and Y and Z. If somebody has done this huge crime, we will let them do X and Y and Z. So that was my first point. The second point was, I mean, all these things that I've read are crimes against women, right? We don't, I was reading yesterday on Twitter, an MCA aspirant for Kileleshwa Ward, her name is Samantha Maina,
yes,
was talking about how she was, her and her people were walking around in peace. You know the way Kenyans like to say these days, let's just work in peace, right? So they're walking around and they're passing on their manifesto to people. And some man comes from the left to tell them rape is high these days. So they're like, okay, what does that mean? And then he tells them, you know, it's not safe for people who are young and beautiful to be walking around. Okay, these are people who are campaigning for political office, but the people whose votes they want are telling them that they are not safe. When we talk about having free and fair elections, and the field is not safe for women in the same way that it is safe for men, how can we say that they are free and how can we say that they are fair? What does that mean for women who are going out to vote when they are by themselves?
Thank you.
If rape is high? You know, so when we talk about a Kenya that we want, is it an equal Kenya for men and women?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe you can get also closing remarks from Dr. Wale, Dr. Vincent, and Rita.
Talk about, for me, let me tell you my personal journey. I grew up saying I want to change the world. I want to change. I realized it was just an illusion. But I could change my world. When I talked about the environment, and I'm talking about who created the environment in the Matatu, it is the people. It is the people who will talk and say, we want good governance. But in the Matatu, at that small unit, we have not exhibited the fact that we want good governance, because we are the ones that will encourage that guy to break the law. So when we talk of accountability, it has to be personal. You know, the Bible says, consider the ant having no guide, ruler, or overseer. That means, you know, it says consider the ant and be wise. So how do we know if we are wise people? Is when we do the right thing without supervision. What do we have today? We pretend to do the right thing for photo ops. That is not where it matters. Where it matters is in my closet. Are you a leader in the closet? You cannot be an effective leader in the full glare of the camera if you have not been an effective leader in the closet. So that is the level of accountability we should demand from ourselves before demanding from others.
All right, thank you. Dr. Vincent.
I'd like to second what my friend Wale is saying, that we can be leaders ourselves. We don't have to wait for somebody else to do it. So if you're in that matatu and the matatu is just behaving in a gross way, if you just raise your voice and say, dereva usiendeshe gari hivyo tena, you know, you can hurt people here. And then a few people pick up what you're saying and they also join you. Then the fact that you came out first and raised your voice and made a statement then forces the driver to do the right thing. Or if you say, I am not going to ride in a matatu that's going like this, and then you come out, then everyone says, ooh, I also need to make a statement.
Thank you.
And then if we all did this, you know, we'd change Kenya.
Thank you very much. Rita.
I'll take it up from leadership. Leadership is important, personal leadership. We choose the spouses we get married to. They provide leadership. We provide leadership for our children. Therefore, it's important that as we go into voting, please show up and choose the president you want, the leaders you want, the way you choose the spouse you want, and expect them to provide leadership for this country the way you provide leadership for your children, and the way you expect, where you send your kids to school, that some leadership be provided. So let's all start from ourselves and take it all the way to the top. It won't happen by itself.
Thank you. Rita.
Thank you.